Hi, this is Lisa Klein again on the curve, and we're here again. This is the return of Dr. Michael Radkowsky.
I'm so excited to be here again.
I'm excited to have you here. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about why I started to do this show, because that kind of segues into Michael being here again. So I'm a physical therapist and I treat patients all day long. And I've been doing this for quite a long time. And while I'm treating, we're usually talking because it's usually an hour session. And I've known Michael for years. And throughout my journey as a physical therapist, because we do full body renovation, we do a lot of mind body work. We do a lot of just whatever the patient needs. We have like a 20,000 technique base of information. And over the years, it's really piqued my interest into other professions and how everything works together. And why I wanted to do this show was because I know so many practitioners who are just, brilliant. And it's so educational for me to hear how all these things work together. So after the first episode that we shot, Michael had some great ideas about further topics to discuss that really resonated with me in the work that we do. So we thought it'd be nice to have another conversation.
Very exciting.
Yay!
Yeah. I love the way that we're all doing the same work, but just from different angles, right?
It's really, really interesting. And I don't know about you, but I'm so in my own little box. To get a level of expertise, as you know, takes years of training, years of practice, and you're in your own little orb. And so sometimes it's hard to connect with people, and you realize everybody is in their own orb doing magnificent work that all can kind of work together. So this is how we join our orbs.
Wonderful.
A bridge between the orbs.
Yes. Or an enlarging of the orb.
An enlarging of the orb, yes, to enlarge all the orbs together.
Yes.
Yes.
So should I
Sure.
introduce today's topic?
I would love you to. Yes.
Today's topic is differentiation, which is, to me, the most magnificent force in human development. It's behind everything wonderful in the last many thousands of years. So what differentiation means in my field, and Lisa, you'll talk about what it means in your field, it's kind of similar. What it means in my field is being able to hold your own shape, even when there's outside pressure not to. So
I love that.
Yeah, it can mean things from being able to be kind to a classmate when you're little, when everyone else is bullying that classmate, to taking a stand for human rights when your community or your country is against the human rights that you're fighting for. It's behind great revolutions, I think, that fight for the enlargement of rights for all humankind. It can be behind fighting for animal rights also, when other people scorn you or mock you for not eating meat. Interest of mine. And many other great forces in history. And beyond that, it's behind all of our being able to have self-esteem, because being a well-differentiated person, or aspiring to be one, means that you behave in a way that you respect, not what other people think you should be doing. And that is how you have self-esteem.
So is there something about the current times that put you in this direction, about what's happening with the current pandemic? Or tell me how you came up with that as an idea. Does it have anything to do with what's happening right now?
Well, when I first thought of it, I thought, gosh, it would be nice to have a topic that isn't about the pandemic, right? Because
okay,
we're so absorbed in it every minute, every waking minute and every non-waking minute, because a lot of us are dreaming about it, that I thought it'd be nice to have a topic that's bigger than the pandemic. That said, it does tie into the pandemic, and I'll explain how. But I'm fortunate enough to, early on in my training many years ago, have fallen into, by good fortune, training with people who worked in this way, meaning that in therapy, the aim is not to help people figure out how to get someone else to meet their needs. That's a very common theme in couples therapy, I'm sad to say. But to be able to meet their own needs, that does not mean that you don't have anything to do with anyone else. Being able to take care of yourself and meet your own needs and behave in a way that you respect. I'm saying the same thing in different ways, right? That actually is a great way to be a strong partner in a relationship. The stronger you are, the more solid you are, the better a partner you are. So I learned to work this way early on, and it totally is the basis of my work with all individuals and couples, to help people be stronger, more solid, respect themselves more resilient. And that is the tie-in with the pandemic, because being able to hold your own shape, even when there's outside pressure from others not to, means that you have to get good at soothing yourself. There may not be someone else that they're telling you you're doing the right thing. You have to be able to calm yourself down, which is the skill that is exactly what we all need to get better at right now. No one else can tell us it's going to be okay. No one else can really calm our fears, but we can do our best to calm ourselves down and go forward in this very difficult time.
I love it. I have 3 comments. Can I make 3 comments?
I'd love to hear your comments, all 3 of them.
Comment 1, I'm not sure if I shared this with you, but one way I'm getting through this situation is by binge watching RuPaul's Drag Race, which is a very great show. And at the end of every episode, he says, and if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else? And it's one of his taglines, to go into your thing about couples therapy, about how you need to love yourself first, and then you can bring that into a relationship. My second point that I wanted to make was that with my business right now, we are having to do things that we've never had to even consider doing before, and we have no idea what we're doing because the information changes daily. So in terms of how there really isn't anyone to tell us what to do, because those people, everything changes on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to, you have to key into your own wisdom or your own whatever to make the right decision.
Beautifully put.
Yeah, it's a situation. And my third comment is about how, tying back to the pandemic, that what a virus does. So again, bacteria, spirochetes, parasites, they damage the outside of a cell. They don't go into a cell. A virus goes into a cell. Viruses have the capacity to change cellular tissue, which is why, like HPV, these things actually can lead to cancer, because a virus can change a cell by definition. So in terms of differentiation, the very essence of being healthy from a virus is that on a cellular level, your body is able to use its own immune system to not have that happen.
I love it.
Isn't it? It's a direct parallel.
Yes, total.
So fascinating.
Yes, that's why I believe it's not just the greatest force in human history, but it's the greatest concept in maybe all life, isn't it?
Well, and interesting, because I know you were raised kosher. And so there was an article that really hit me a couple of years ago about how a medical student went to a slaughterhouse. And it was a whole article, I think it was in the Times, about how he wanted to know what makes something kosher. Mm-hmm. And what makes something kosher is that the membranes have not been violated. Part of it. Like the way that the animal is killed, the way that it was prepared, everything has to be in place, which basically reflects the health of the animal.
Huh.
Because all the fascial membranes, what we call the basement membranes, everything is intact. And that's that's what something has, and I'm sure there are other things as well, but it's all about the tissue has to be, differentiated. Mm-hmm. So that's all. Okay, back to you.
Okay. So it's a little hard for me to wrap my head around that one, because I aspire to be vegan, but not everyone is. So
well, it's just an example of how this concept, if you look at it, it winds its way through many different areas, which is really
yes, it does. Yeah, I don't mean to give you a hard time. I can see that. Yes. Yeah.
So tell me about differentiation. So when you're working with clients, like can you talk more about that?
Yeah. Well, it operates on so many levels. I see it all the time in relationships. When people are looking to their significant other to soothe them or behave the way that they'd like them to behave. And then people feel pressure to sometimes sell themselves out. What I mean by that is go against their own integrity to behave in a way that they don't respect because someone else wants them to, or if they think that if I am this way, like in dating situations, then maybe the other person will like me more. But of course, then you're just selling a false image of yourself. And
Okay,
how
so
can you
that's
really be in a
wrong.
relationship?
You're saying that's wrong, Michael?
Well, only if you don't want to pretend to
I'm
be someone
kidding.
you're not the rest of your life.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. All
yeah.
right. All right. Fake
So,
bad. Okay, got it.
but let me go to more subtle or sublime level of how it operates in relationships, because it's not just when someone is asking you to sell yourself out in some terrible way, or hey, let's get drunk tonight, or things people might do on first dates or second dates. But in a long-term relationship with someone you really love and respect, they will at times put pressure on you to do things that may somehow violate your integrity, or you may want to really do something different than they want, and it may disappoint them. um, I'm not saying that differentiation means that you always do what you want. I'm not saying that at all. But it means that you're able to take your own shape when it's important to take your own shape. Um, so this means all kinds of things. It means, for one thing, that people can have a deeper relationship because this pushes you to talk to your significant other. And I'll get to situations that aren't about intimate relationships in a moment. But it pushes you to talk to your significant other about how come different things are important to you, and they get to talk about why different things are important to them, so that you get to know each other better, rather than just presuming that it's my job to meet your needs or vice versa. So the more that I talk about differentiation, the more I work in this area, the more I realize how deep the concept is. It also, I hope I explained, it pushes us to get to know ourselves better, to define ourselves, to think about what our deepest values are, and share that with people we're close to, so that they know us better as well.
Can I ask, when you're working with this with your clients, do you bring that back to the parenting that they had as a child? Because how much of that goes back to when you were growing? And because I know from what I've, whatever, like, children need to have that mirrored. So for a person to know who they are, a lot of that depends on positive mirroring when you're a child, because that's how you create your self construct, correct?
Yes.
So can you talk about that? Because in my understanding, sometimes when that doesn't really go well, then
Mm-hmm.
the person, as they grow up, they don't have really good boundaries. They don't have a sense of who they are as a person, and that could lead into these enmeshed relationships and stuff like that. Is that true?
Well, I'll give a short answer, and let's see if I explain it. And otherwise, let's go into the more depth, because I
Okay.
love your question. So, as of course, that I have a son who's going to be 4 months old this week. And since way, way, way before he was on the scene, just thinking about the kind of parent I wanted to be, I always thought that the thing that I wanted to do above all was to teach him to think for himself, uh, which is the idea of differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you can do that, you are helping a child to think big, to not go along with the crowd, to not be a follower, to dare to be different and disagree with people. But that does involve you as a parent being able to tolerate your child being very different from you. So that's going to be, I'm sure it's going to be a challenge for me when he thinks differently from how I do about all kinds of things. I'll tell you, he's just starting to precursor. He's started to turn over from his back to his front. Now he's on his front. He wants to turn from his front to his back. So I said to my husband, well, we're in for a lot of trouble. Our lives are about to change once he starts being mobile. It's the same thing, right? We can't control him. We have to
Yeah.
let him do, well, within reason, because he's going to be a teeny baby,
Yeah.
but do what he wants to do. That's life, right?
I think that is such a beautiful example though, Michael, because, bringing it back to your health and well-being, there's so many studies about how your physical health is directly related to your mental health and your idea of yourself as like your body tells the story, your body keeps the score.
Mm-hmm.
And from working with patients as long as I have, you see this in patients' bodies. And people who didn't have really the most functionally appropriate parenting, you can feel it in their body. Like I have clients now who are, functional in a lot of ways, but emotionally, they're really dysfunctional. And when you take a deep, I'm not a therapist. We do get referrals from therapists. We do more of the body resetting from that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we spend a lot of time with our patients, so we hear a lot. And I think that just as how you're saying it all comes down to differentiation, I'd say for your health, it all comes down to love and like feeling loved and feeling valued and
Mm-hmm.
feeling like you have a place on the earth and feeling like you can take up your own physical space. Like, how does that ping into differentiation?
I'll tell you, Lisa, I sometimes tell my clients, you can tell I'm very excited about what you're saying.
Okay.
I sometimes tell my clients, I love my work because, among other things, I keep learning from the people I work with, right? I understand things deeper the more I do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was listening to you now, I just understood something really important that I'd never thought about before, which is that being able to take a differentiated stance also means, I hope you'll say this relates to what you just said, being able to tolerate other people seeing things differently from you, right?
That is true.
It's not just that I can, I do what's important to me and I feel good about myself, but I'm able to respect someone else and their views and opinions, and that we can be close, even though we're two different people and everyone's different, which is why we really, you can't fight the concept of differentiation unless you want to be pretty miserable, because we're all different. We have to find a way to be close to people who are really different from who we are.
But what about, again, what happens when you're growing up? And again, I'm segueing back to RuPaul's Drag Race. All roads lead to RuPaul. But the people who are on his show generally are people who have had difficult lives. By virtue of the fact they're usually gay and they're drag queens, and the stories are just awful. A lot of parental rejection and things that really are not great. So what happens when you are a child? Because when you're a child, you are your whole, especially they call it the terrible twos, like that's when you're focusing on differentiating, right?
Well, yes. Okay, a great question, and I'll try to give a simple answer.
I know these are like big concepts that we're,
No, it's such a great question. So let me see if I can hit all the points you're making. So you brought up attachment styles before, or I'm not sure you used the phrase, but the best kind of attachment to have is a secure attachment, which means that we know our parents love us, right? And we're not scared when they're not around. That's on a very purely physical level. They do this test where the caregiver leaves the room and they watch how the child reacts. If the child cries and then the parent comes back in, the caregiver, the child's comforted and happy again, that's a secure attachment. They know they're okay. And parents give their children that attachment by being loving and consistent with the children and letting the children know that you're the apple of your parents' eye. Okay, how does this relate to differentiation? Because you learn that you are loved and you can be yourself, and that if you behave in a way that your parents don't like, they're still going to love you. That's a secure attachment. So you can see how that will generalize to things like if you let your parents down, if you don't get the grades they want, if you're not interested in the sports that they want you to be interested in, blah, blah, blah. that if they let you know that they still love you for being who you are, that's going to help you be a confident, secure person going forward, and have a strong and solid sense of self, which is another way of saying you're well differentiated, right? So, of course, many of us don't have that experience growing up because everyone is human. Even the best parents are human and sometimes are disappointed in their children. Well, of course, at times people should be disappointed in their children, but, like they don't communicate to their children all the time that they're loved and wonderful as they are. Well, so then there's worse cases than that when kids are abused or neglected or their peers do a number on them. Very, very, very common, right? Kids can be really mean to each other, and it's easy for people to feel bad about themselves for who they are when their peers are being really mean to them. So what do we do? What can we do about that? Because it really affects how we feel about ourselves. And it's not easy when you're growing up to take a stand about what's important to you when all your peers are going to mock or ridicule you. Okay, so sadly, the answer is we do have to get through it. But once we become adults or nearing adulthood, we can start to get better at, how do I put this? We can start to get better at finding a peer group who will support us. We can start to challenge our thinking that we have to be like everyone else. People get stop being so mean a lot of times, peers at least, as they get older. And you develop the ability to soothe yourself as you get older in the face of other people not liking you. That is the challenge, to find a way to be able to believe that you are okay as you are. And if you don't like who you are, to work on being the person you respect so that you can like yourself as you are. That's another thing I love about differentiation, is it pushes us to figure out how we want to be so that we'll respect ourselves. So it's also a vehicle for us to develop greater self-esteem by becoming a person whom we respect.
So you're reminding me of, did I cut you off? Were you?
No, I hope you followed that very long answer.
No, that was good. What you're reminding me of is one of the reasons why I wanted to start these dialogues, which is that in my experience, when I work with patients, people don't always know where to go for help. And so and I know you do this as well. So when people come in and I see that they have things going on, we will recommend acupuncture, naturopath therapy. So, even though I'm a physical therapist, we don't assume that we can fix everything with physical therapy. It takes a village kind of thing. And I think one thing that you hit on was, I think, really important, which is, so a lot of people don't understand like what the purpose is of therapy and counseling. And one of the main reasons to go see a therapist or a psychologist, counselor, is to work these things out. So let's say you didn't get the love, you didn't get the modeling, things didn't go great when you were a child, and you grow up and you end up seeing, your life may not be how you want to make changes. You follow me? Like that is the time when you go to a therapist. Like that is what they're for.
Yes.
And I think so many people have a misunderstanding that, you only go see a therapist or a counselor when when you're having a mental break, only for times of major, like, nervous breakdown crisis.
Right.
But which is obviously appropriate. But I think it's important for just everybody to really understand that the purpose of seeing somebody like Michael or, working these things through is to have the life that you want to have. And if you're making decisions that may not seem right to you and you see yourself in these certain patterns, that's what a therapist can help you work through. It doesn't have to be that you're at the end of your rope and you're suicidal or anything like that.
No, I agree with you. To help you figure out how come you're stuck in the ways you're stuck, and how you can challenge yourself to become a more resilient person and get past those blockages. And do it by we can't go back to our childhoods. We're not going to have a perfect parent. We're not going to have a spouse who's always going to soothe us, because life doesn't work that way. So the more that we can learn to soothe ourselves, to find ways to feel good about ourselves, if there are things about ourselves that we don't like, to work through them. All of those things help us to become more solid, have more self-esteem, be able to soothe ourselves when we're anxious. And when we behave in a way that we respect, it also obviously is helpful toward alleviating depression, another big thing that people come into therapy for.
I think in my field, there's been years and years and years of traditional American allopathic medicine where it's like they're big on diagnoses of things. And it's like, okay, you have this, you have that, too bad for you. And this is what I talk about in my video on my website.
Mhm.
And it's like, that's just the most uncreative, ridiculous way of seeing things. It's like, okay, maybe you have headaches. Let's figure out why you have headaches. Maybe
Mhm.
you have this. Let's figure out why you have this. And what I've spent my whole professional career learning is, okay, well, that might be your diagnosis, but that doesn't mean it has to stay your diagnosis. Let's fix it. And that's not the norm in American medicine. American medicine is like, again, too bad for you.
Mhm.
And for us, we have more of the philosophy like, okay, we got this. We've done this. We can do this. We'll figure it out. And even
Sure.
things that are super complicated, can do pretty well on a lot of the time now, because we take the time, we figure it out. So would you say, I feel like in mental health, do you feel like there's still as much of a stigma around seeing a psychologist or a therapist or counselor, or is that changing? And in your field, is the focus on, okay, how do you fix, like, we're not just gonna, talk endlessly. We're gonna like try and recalibrate you.
Mhm.
I know I just asked you two questions, but.
Well, I think in our area, in metropolitan Washington, D.C., people are a lot more comfortable seeing a therapist.
Mhm.
I know, I'm sorry to say, there is a stigma in a lot of places, but it's about mental health, right? And yes, you can find therapists who are just going to talk endlessly and ask you how you feel about something, which
Thank you.
at times is a useful question for people to get to know themselves, right? But
Mhm.
there's more to therapy than asking how you feel about things. There's helping you to challenge yourself so that you can move forward. I had a wonderful mentor who used to say that therapy is to help people see that they are wearing a distorted pair of glasses and then to grind new lenses, right?
I
It's a
love that.
wonderful concept. And another way of looking at therapy is, remember I was talking about attachment styles before, and the best kind of attachment style you can have is a secure attachment. It helps you become a solid person who believes in yourself going forward and can behave in ways that have integrity, even if other people don't see things the same way, AKA differentiation. Well, there's a concept called earned secure attachment. And how do you get that, right? So this is great news. It means that we're not doomed if we didn't have a perfect childhood. Well, the hallmarks of earned secure attachment are being able to soothe yourself, right? Um, and how do you develop that? People say that meditation is, believe it or not, a great route to an earned secure attachment, because it teaches people to soothe themselves, right? To quiet themselves down inside. But of course, that's not the only route, right? The work that I am privileged to do, helping people in therapy to become more differentiated, is similarly a route to an earned secure attachment, meaning of all the hallmarks of a secure attachment, even if you didn't have the perfect upbringing, because you are able to soothe yourself, to be able to keep calm in tough situations and circumstances, even if someone else is not holding you up or patting you on the back.
Now, what types of techniques do you use to do that?
What types of techniques?
Well,
Well,
do you do EMDR or?
uh, I do sometimes do EMDR, right?
Okay.
I don't do a lot of EMDR. in my practice. I use it mostly for really big trauma that people have been through.
Can you talk about
Um,
that for people who don't know? Can you just talk
yeah.
about what that is real quick?
Yes, EMDR is an acronym standing for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, which is a mouthful. And I would say, simply put, it's a technique that helps people to process trauma that has happened to them, stuff that's gotten literally stuck in our brains. Because if you do brain imaging, you'll see that when people think about trauma that they have not really dealt with, it's stuck in their brain, which is why it's such a vivid images in your mind. When you think of something awful that happened to you, you often feel it in your body. And EMDR is a tool that helps people to process the traumas that gets unstuck and processed by their brain. So the best case outcome is it becomes just something that happened to you, like you went grocery shopping a few weeks ago. Not these days, because now grocery shopping can be traumatic. But in the
That's a
old
bad
days,
example.
sorry, it's the one I usually use, and I realized while I was saying that these days grocery shopping is traumatic. Am I wearing my mask? Did that person get too close to me?
Can I
So
wait? Can I just spit off for a second?
yes.
So I went on a walk with two friends this morning. We all had masks on,
Mm-hmm.
and then we went to the farmers market, which has now completely changed what they're doing because of COVID. So, it's half the size it was. I mean, it's kind of, they're doing all these precautions, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's traumatic to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is, it's the farmers market. It's like this
Yeah.
good, healthy, wholesome thing, and now it's just like,
Yeah. I saw our farmer's market yesterday, surrounded by yellow tape. There was a long line to get in. People had to keep 6 feet. Someone was, I think, handing out masks as they went in. It did not look like a fun experience.
it was not a fun experience.
Yeah. Yes. So to
Okay.
go back to
Back
your
to what you're saying.
question, what other techniques do I use? So basically, it's talk therapy, which means looking at your life and thinking about how come you have the ways of seeing yourself that you do, and how come you have the fears that you have of doing something different, and getting clarity about what actually is important to you. Um, this is, I'm going to throw something in for fun because I think our listeners will enjoy this concept. I have another wonderful mentor. She's actually the wife of the mentor who talked to me about the lenses. That therapy is about recognizing they have distorted lenses and regrinding them. So she says, she has a great saying: if it's hysterical, it's historical, which means if something's really big in your life, it has its roots in your history.
You use that. We mentioned that, whatever, that came up years ago with you, and I still to this day think about that
Yeah.
when it's like, oh, if it's hysterical, it's historical. So
Yep.
'cause so many reactions, and in our we have a bunch of videos on our website about processing, and one thing we talk about is the limbic system, and about how the limbic system is the part of the brain that perpetuates these survival type of behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
and they tend to be like hysterical kinds of behaviors. And
Yeah.
so what we're trying to do, again, for the neurobiology of trauma, is how to get people out of that,
Mm-hmm.
and where it actually sits in your brain. And for example, hoarding toilet paper, things that people have done when this whole thing hit that were just nonsensical
Yeah.
and really ridiculous. And so, but you don't realize that when you're in a trauma trigger, your brain actually gets hijacked, and you do these behaviors almost like subconsciously in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So yes.
Yes. And then to say another word about how I work, I do pay attention to physical techniques such as meditation and relaxation techniques that you can use in the moment when you're freaking out, so that you can get a grip on yourself and calm yourself down even a little bit, so that you can think, how do I want to respond, rather than reacting, right? When you're reacting, you're like, it's the opposite of a differentiated stance. But instead of reacting, how can I calm myself down enough to think and respond thoughtfully to the situation?
Now, if you're half Jewish and half Italian,
Mhm.
specifically Sicilian Italian,
uh,
is there any leeway in that hysteria? Like, just
yes.
any ethnic change? Like, do you think Swedes are generally calmer than Italians? I'm just asking for a friend.
Well, yes, I think there is some, uh, familial and cultural
Hmm.
people differences. But here's the good news is that you identify that about yourself. You can easily, I would like to suggest experiment, get a grip on it by recognizing that that is the direction that you go in and having a sense of humor about it. And then
Yeah.
when it comes up, you say, oh, there's that Sicilian Jewish part of me, aka all of me, evidently. And, but so, and when you spot it, then that can help you to calm down, right? You can do it right there. You don't have to take the hysteria so seriously anymore. You're like, oh yeah, there's that hysterical thing. I can get a grip now.
Sorry, this is just amusing me because I I do say this all the time.
Does it help?
Yeah, because I know. Like I remember I was in Israel. This was years ago when I worked in the clinic in Israel, and
Mhm.
they were having a staff meeting and they were yelling at each other. And I was like, what in the hell? And it was just like, "Blah, blah," and they're like, okay. That's just how they were communicating.
Yeah,
So yeah, yeah.
you have to take
There's
it
a
so
range.
seriously, right?
Range of normal in there.
Yeah, right.
Good to know.
You were going to talk some about how differentiation is a concept in your work. Now, you may have said all the points you want to make about that, but
I
are
can
there
make more
more?
points.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that is there's a whole uh, concept of how cells de-differentiate. Actually, that is the term. Is because they become non-differentiated. That's the
Hmm.
actual term. So when something comes into your body, the first thing the body is going to try and do is get rid of it. It's going to try and excrete it if it can. And if it can't, whatever gets into your body is going to start to kind of take up residence and make a little house for itself and then start to spread out and then starts to take the system down. So it's called homotoxicology and it's a 6-phase.
Wow.
It's like an actual whole philosophy that
Hmm.
homeopathy and other natural medicines are based on. So
Hmm.
when we have a patient come in, we're always like, okay, where are they in those 6 phases? And so you can kind of score a patient with their general health based upon where they are in that 6-phase paradigm. But it's all about how differentiated are the cells. And every cell of your body is covered in a layer of like a membrane, the lipid bilayer, which is why fish oil is so good for you because it feeds that lipid bilayer. So when things start to fall apart in
Or
your
omega-3, any omega-3, right? Because I take
yes,
a
it
vegan
does attach to
version
me from fish
from algae. Good. Okay. The fish
or,
get it from the algae.
or flax. Yes, that's totally fine. Good point. Yes. So
Want to
basically,
be sure. Go ahead.
yes, the stronger your cells are, the less they will be taken down by a virus or toxicity or whatever gets into your system. Period. So the people who we're seeing who are having a hard time with the current virus
Hmm.
all have comorbidities, whether they have been reported on or not. They have to have them. Science is science. There's no big mystery. Is your immune system, are your cells strong enough to fight off whatever's trying to attack them, or is it not? And
Wow.
yeah, it's pretty basic. So this is why with all of our patients, we flood them with oils
Hmm.
because we're trying to get their cells to be stronger. And when the body starts to fall apart, it does it in a very prescribed way, depending upon your genetics. So we don't have to, this is a whole another topic for another time, but it all starts in your gut. So the healthier your gut, the healthier you're going to be. But if
Hmm.
your gut is not healthy, your body will start to fall apart based upon your genetic makeup. And everybody has a fragile area. So whether it's neuro, bone health, visceral cancers, endocrine, brain
Hmm.
health. So,
Hmm.
and so when people come in to see us, we kind of score them as to what's their vulnerability and how sick are they. And then what we do is we build them up, just like you do. We build them up from the core so that then over time, the body can rebuild whatever trauma, whatever happened and got into their system.
Lisa, this is so, I mean, I think our whole conversation is fascinating, but what you just said, think about the parallel. I would say that I'm going to get this wrong, but I'm not going to use the right terms, but the cells coming in from outside that can destabilize you are just like other people's beliefs and values flooding you and getting in your way from living in a way that you respect.
You are correct.
Wow.
Well,
so cool.
So systems theory is like real. So it applies to different things. And this is again for another time. Years ago, I had a patient who, brilliant woman, and we would have these conversations about how this would apply to a society, a failing state, a country. Like, what could you do to extrapolate these? And we actually had a discernment group that we're running with a Jesuit priest from Georgetown, which is fascinating, about how societies also function in this manner.
Oh, wow.
So again, that's a whole nother conversation, but systems theory is systems theory is systems theory. So everything that you're saying in terms of the consciousness and the psychology and the emotionality is completely paralleled in the body.
Yeah.
Completely paralleled. And so this is one thing when you're in the middle of a pandemic, the stronger, there is so much research about the body-mind connection and about your immune system. The stronger you can be with yourself and being positive and being relaxed, your immune system will be stronger. And once we all get the antibody tests, and we're going to see that 80% of us have already been exposed, probably, if not more than that, and we managed to fight it off.
Wow.
It's going to be an interesting thing to see that, because again, there's so much hysteria right now that once the testing is more widespread, I think is a little bit misplaced, to be honest. So, but yes. So what are some tools that people can do at home? Like, let's say people are listening to this and they're resonating with the fact that they want to be more differentiated. So meditation is good. What other things could help people?
I would say to work on developing, this is the best thing you can do. Yes, meditation is a great way to soothe yourself. But the best thing that any of us can do, I would say, is start to develop a filter that we're always looking at ourselves and our actions through. And the filter is, am I living up to the person whom I want to be? Am I behaving in a way that I respect, that lines up with my values? Again, my wonderful mentor says if it's hysterical, it's historical, says that it's a really good thing when our insides match our outsides, right? So you develop a filter to keep an eye on yourself. That also means thinking about who you actually want to be, what it means to live in a way that you respect, and challenging the things that you've been taught or the ways that other people around you behave, rather than blindly going along with them. I know an awful lot of people who understandably want to fit in and have friends, and that can mean that they behave in all kinds of ways that aren't actually who they want to be. Now, it's a conundrum. I think I'm using that word correctly because I rarely use that word. A dilemma, that they may at times be lonelier, but are you really not lonely if you're in a group of people pretending to be someone whom you're not and living in ways that you don't respect? So that's part of life, right? Is sometimes you have to accept that other people aren't going to like who you are and what you believe in. That said, the more all of us work on this, I hope the more room there is for us to be close with people who are not exactly like we are, which is, of course, a giant problem in our country right now, in the world. Going to that bigger level that you were hinting at a few moments ago.
I think it's a very big philosophical question, which has a lot of different ways that you can apply that. And we see it in a microcosm. I see it with patients' health, because health is like politics or religion. It's very difficult to make a change in how somebody thinks about their health. So I've had patients where we had a magnificent change,
Yeah.
and then they try and send in friends of theirs, and the friends, they know what we've done, but they can't wrap their mind around how we did, it's just not their thing. And we don't try and convince anybody. So it's like, we'll treat you. If you don't want to come in, what do I care?
Yeah.
Like I have plenty of people, thank God, who want to come in. So people have these belief systems around, oh, I grew up drinking soda, so therefore it must not be terrible for me. Well, it's terrible, smoking, diet. It's amazing how people grow up or have these ideas put into them that are not healthy or normal at all. I mean, not they're normal, but they're not necessarily healthy. And then it becomes very hard to change that. And I feel like what you run into probably is a similar thing where, for you to want to be living your best life and be really true to who you are, you're almost running counterculture to do that in a weird way, because there's so much pressure to conform and to
Yeah.
follow the herd. And even the work that we do is not necessarily traditional. And, thank God I have a thick skin and I do it anyway. I don't care what anybody says about me because I know it works.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you're the same way. But it can be challenging to take that route.
Yeah. Well, I've done a lot of work over the years to be more a person who I hope can stand on my own, even when there's pressure from outside sources not to. But I want to say that differentiation is always the work in progress, right?
Yeah.
I'm not putting myself on a pedestal at all. We all are challenged at times to speak up or take action in a way that other people may not admire or may criticize.
Right.
But you're right. People come in and we have to be willing to challenge ourselves to grow. That is true. I think that pretty much is in agreement with what you just said.
This has been so interesting, Michael.
It was. As I said, I learned a lot just talking about this stuff and
Well,
learning from you.
it's funny because as much as you and I have talked, I don't think we've ever talked about this.
No,
And
we
we've
usually have
talked
much
a
sillier
lot.
conversations. What?
But yeah, yeah, we usually have sillier conversations. We watch
Yeah.
Judy Garland movies.
Or just laugh a lot about inane things.
Yeah,
right?
we do that a lot of.
But I learned so much about the parallels and realized, as you said, about how systems, that's life in our world, right?
This is great.
Yeah.
So just to summarize, if people are feeling like they're wanting to have more differentiation, meditation is good, maybe yoga, like things that kind of bring you into your body.
Mm-hmm.
And then also trying to connect with who you are as a person. So maybe journaling will be helpful with that, or even like vision boarding, just like coming up with, is that helpful to do things like that?
Yes, I think simply thinking about your life and challenging yourself to think about how come you have the views or do the things that you do. A lot of times people have not really thought very well out how they want to live, and they just do what's expected of them. Right? Can be a very stifling way to live.
That's true.
At times it's wonderful to conform. It feels comfortable and you're like everyone else, but that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with doing that. There's a problem when you are betraying yourself or what's important to you to do that.
Right.
So it's about thinking and challenging yourself to get more clarity about who you are, who you want to be, how you want to live your life. I also think sometimes it's just inspiring. This is not the whole answer, but adding one thing to what you said, it can be really inspiring to read biographies of people whom you admire and get more clarity about how they became the people they were, how they decided or found the courage to take the actions that they decided to take that make them people whom you admire.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I always think for
Yeah.
some reason Bruce Springsteen, for whenever I see him I'm like, he knows who he is.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you ever watch him perform, every cell of his body is authentic. And so I kind of use him as a And Beyonce.
Uh-huh.
Beyonce as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
just people who, in my mind, are fully embody being themselves,
Yeah.
which I think is great. So if you're gonna be anybody, be Beyonce, but she's taken, so you have to be yourself. Sorry. There was some saying about that I just flubbed, but moving on.
Well, to go back to Judy Garland, she
Oh
said,
yeah, there you go.
always be a first-rate version of yourself, not a second-rate version of someone else.
Oh, I love that.
But to get inspiration from others, absolutely a wonderful thing to do, isn't it?
I love that.
Yeah, so I'm total agreement with you. Yeah,
Excellent. I'm glad we can come at a unified front at the end.
yeah. Well, the whole session, the
No,
whole
no,
talk, this was great.
it's great.
Yeah.
All right,
I
well,
hope our listeners enjoyed it.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
Thank you again. This has been so fantastic.
It was
And
wonderful to spend this hour with you,
I
however
know
long
this
it
has
was.
been, I've
Yeah,
learned so much.
yeah.
And I'll be in touch, and have a great day.
Super.
Are you taking Joshua to see your parents today?
Yep,
Wonderful.
I'm looking out the window. It's a little gray, but we'll be meeting outside and keeping a few feet apart. Yeah.
It's not too bad. It's not, I mean, it's chilly, but it's not terrible. So,
Yeah.
okay.
All right.
Have a great
Take
day.
care. Thank
Love
you.
you.
It was
See you soon.
wonderful. Love you too. Bye.
Bye.